Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey. In today's video, I will be taking a detailed look at all of the best captaincy options ahead of FPL Gameweek 1. Right then, so let's get started with my first captaincy video of the season. This will, of course, be a weekly series, so if you did enjoy today's video and you get value from it, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a like, hit subscribe, and importantly, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future iterations of this show or any of my other content, of course, as well. In the meantime, let's get started with the Game Week 1 captains. Now, I think it is important to note that whilst FPL probably can't be won in the first few game weeks, it can almost certainly be lost. And captaincy historically is one of the biggest deciding factors, or the swingiest factor, when it comes to FPL decision making. Of course, you get double the points, so it's double the variance. So you do want to nail that captain. So I think it is worth having a dedicated weekly video for this specific topic. And what I'll aim to do each week is break down all of the pros and cons for all of the main captaincy options. If I miss any of the captaincy options, drop a comment below and we can have a chat about them in the comments, of course. But I'll pick out a few of my favorites and we'll talk about the pros and cons of each. A bit data-led, a bit eye test-led, and a bit narrative-led. And all of that together will hopefully help you come to an informed decision, and probably me as well throughout the season. Starting off with Game Week 1, of course, and what I've done is I've broken down the top few captaincy options by expected points, thanks to the Solio Analytics team. So I'm in partnership with Solio this year. They're not paying me or anything. I just really like the tool. So a lot of the data you see on screen here, especially those three right-hand side columns, are all projection data from live market odds that Solio kindly provided me with. I think it is good to start off with the very best of the fixtures. Now, Liverpool at home to Bournemouth are projected to get the most goals out of all of the Premier League sides this year. I'll just quickly go over to my live screen where, again, I'm getting the live market odds for the goals scored, projections at least, for the first game week. I've ordered them and Liverpool do come out on top by a fairly significant margin of about 0.35. They're expected to get, on average, 2.65 goals against Bournemouth in game week 1. That is the best, but it's not so far ahead that you have to captain a Liverpool option. There are definitely good other options out there, but Liverpool do have a fair few attackers that you're probably going to want to consider using your armband on. So before talking about the three Liverpool players on this spreadsheet in particular, it's important to note why the markets are suggesting it's such a good fixture, even though it's actually only yellow on the ticker. Well, context is required. Bournemouth do like to play a high line. They will come out and play against Liverpool no matter what. Iraola has his principles. They won't sit back in a low block, almost certainly. Adding on to that, they have lost a lot of their best defensive players. So Huijsen's obviously gone off to Real Madrid. You've got Zabani off to PSG. Kerkez went to Liverpool. And Kepa is now at Arsenal, having been on loan at Bournemouth from Chelsea. They've replaced him well with Petrovic, but it is a new look back line that might struggle to begin with. And there's a lot of weaker parts in that back line as it stands right now. So whilst I expect them to be a great Premier League side once again over the long term, Game Week 1 might come a little bit too soon for what is a new look back line. And Liverpool are a great attack. So they will want to exploit that. They do have players that get in behind high lines very quickly. Salah in particular, of course, historically. So I do expect goals in that game. I think it is a great home fixture to try and take advantage of when we're talking about captaincy. Now, firstly, top of the spreadsheet, no surprises here. Mo Salah does come out as the best in terms of the expected points, 8.29 at the moment via Solio, and a goal involvement projection of over 1, which is a fairly rare phenomenon in FPL. You don't expect a player to get over a projected goal or an assist per 90 in most game weeks. So that is incredibly high. Now, we all know the benefits of Mo Salah. He's an incredibly fit athlete. He always does preseason the right way. He comes into game week 1 sharp, ready to go, and he's got a great game week 1 average score. I think it's about 12 now. He hauls most seasons. It is worth noting that they do tend to play the promoted clubs quite often in game week 1, so that might boost it a bit. But it's undeniable that Mo Salah does get off to a hot start, and I don't think it's just a narrative. I think he does keep himself very fit and he is usually ready and raring to go in game week 1. So Salah is undoubtedly a very good captain. However, Liverpool do have other good options now that also take up a decent percentage of the goal share in that 2.65 that I talked about. So Wirtz and Ekitike both register pretty well on the captaincy matrix. And if you were looking to go a little bit differential, I really like the sound of both of them, especially because I'm starting to see quite a few non-Salah drafts in game week 1. I wouldn't let that, if you're going without Salah, I wouldn't let that put you off of captaining a Liverpool player against Bournemouth. Wirtz and Ekitike won't have penalties, and maybe Ekitike's minutes will be managed a little bit. However, both of them are projected to get very good goal involvement. In fact, not that far off of Mo Salah either. And Ekitike in particular, I thought he looked incredibly sharp in that Community Shield. Whereas, to be fair, Mo Salah was fairly wide. He only got 26 touches. So again, if you want to talk narrative, then Ekitike looks ready and raring to go, and through the centre was picking up a lot of chances, took that goal really, really well. So on the eye, Ekitike might be an interesting way to play it if you're looking to go a little bit more differential. The expected points are lower in both cases because they don't have the benefit of penalties. Wirtz does look like he will have the benefit of set pieces on the right-hand side though, so keep an eye out for that. And both of them play so central and so close to goal that I can't help but feel that they will get plenty of attacking returns this season. Even against Bournemouth, I can see a player like Ekitike breaking that high line at regular intervals. So don't rule either of them out, even if you're going without Salah in game week 1. I'm sure you still are considering Liverpool coverage. And just because you might not have the main man on penalties, that doesn't mean the other options can't be good captaincy alternatives. And either one of them could pop off this game week. Gakpo as well was just under the expected points margin for game week 1 to appear on this spreadsheet. But I wouldn't rule him out either. He looks pretty locked in at left wing and is getting good minutes right now. So I think any one of those three, you could maybe go against Mo Salah and still have plenty to celebrate in that Bournemouth fixture. Now, moving on from the Bournemouth fixture in particular, you've got plenty of other good fixtures out there. Palmer comes out really well on the expected points at home to Palace. 6.79 is the best out of all of the Premier League players this week. What I would say about Palmer, and I don't dislike it as a captaincy option per se, the expected goal involvement is very high. The team goal projection isn't too bad either at over 2. But having watched Crystal Palace in the Community Shield, they look like a side that are right up for it. They were very, very competitive. They've still got the same backline that they finished last season with. There's very little upheaval in that team at time of recording. Obviously, they could lose Mark Gahey. They could lose Eberiche Eze between now and Saturday. But at time of recording, they look like a very solid team who have had a good preseason, especially considering what they had last preseason. They lost Michael Olise. They also had a few players coming back from tournaments like Mateta as well. So they didn't have the best preparation last year. This year, they look really solid to begin with. They play very well against Liverpool, obviously won that game on penalties. So I wouldn't be surprised if that is a pretty tough match for Chelsea. Palmer, though, in fairness, is on penalties. He gets 90 minutes. He's on some set pieces. The data is great, so don't let that put you off. The fixture might not be quite as good as the Bournemouth one on paper, but I think a lot of the Palmer qualities outweigh the fixture to some extent. So he's not my favourite captaincy option, but he's definitely in the mix. And if you're going without Salah and you just want that security of minutes, penalties, set pieces, then Palmer is another very sensible way to play it. Erling Haaland is one that I do really rate for game week 1. I think actually the models are possibly a little bit harsh on him at 6.24 expected points. The goal involvement's pretty good. And the reason that I think the models are maybe a little bit harsh is because I think they're maybe overplaying how good Wolves are going to be in game week 1. They have had a really poor preseason. Wolves fans are quite worried about it as well. They've got players in their backline that they're not comfortable with. And I do just wonder if Man City turn up in game week 1. I know they've had a short preseason. I know they've only played one preseason friendly. But you'd think that probably means that they're going to be fairly fresh. They didn't exactly go the distance in the Club World Cup, so they've had a reasonable amount of time off. And I do get the feeling that Man City are gearing up for a big year. And Erling Haaland through the centre, on penalties, 90 minutes, fully fit, against a Wolves backline that fans aren't particularly happy with, that in pre-season hasn't looked too impressive. I do get a little bit of a gut feeling that there's going to be a big score here. And Erling Haaland, if he can get 2 or 3 in game week 1, that could be a great captaincy differential considering he's only 20% owned. So I really like Haaland as a way to go up against Salah if you're going without Salah, of course. We've talked about Verts Ekitike, so a couple of more differential captains perhaps. I'm sure Pedro Porro won't be in a lot of people's captaincy conversations this week, but do at least consider him. At home to Burnley, who don't score many goals even in the Championship, their strengths were mainly down to their defence last year. So you're expecting maybe a good chance of a clean sheet to begin with any Spurs defender. Porro has good attacking upside and will be camped in their final third at times, I'm sure, against a low block Burnley. So he looks like Tottenham's chief creator with Maddison and Kulusevski out. He's on set pieces as well. Not bad underlying attacking data last season in what was a pretty tumultuous, pretty difficult year for Spurs anyway. And with that home fixture game week 1, he's got a lot of different avenues to points. He won't be good on the DEFCON against Burnley, I'm sure, but he's got good attacking threat. He's on set pieces. He'll be their chief creator and a good chance of a clean sheet against Burnley, who don't score many goals either. So as a differential, I do quite like it. And those 5.52 expected points is not that far below some of the heavy hitter attackers on penalties either. So if you really wanted to think outside the box, go ultra differential and go against the grain, that Burnley fixture for Porro does seem like an interesting candidate. Saka comes out as always as a decent captaincy option. Away at Man United, he's projected over 5 expected points, so I wouldn't want to put anyone off of him by any means. But the idea that he's definitely on penalties is something that I would question now with Gyökeres in the side. And although we don't know whether Gyökeres is going to even start, let alone get 90 minutes, I think the odds are looking pretty good now that he will be the centre forward, he will be the main man. And this is just personal opinion, but I do think Gyökeres will take penalties away from Saka, if not to begin with, eventually. So the risk is there. So paying 10 million on a player that I couldn't guarantee penalties for, especially when Man United look like they've strengthened a little bit. Again, I'm not by any means saying that Arsenal won't score 2 or 3 in that fixture, because they could easily do so. But when you look at some of the other home fixtures on the table this week, I'm not sure that Saka is the way I'd be playing it with captaincy. He's still a good option to have in your side, though. He's looked fantastic in pre-season. He looks back to his absolute best. He looks fully fit. And in game week 2, they've got Leeds at home. So it might be one that, okay, maybe don't captain this week, although don't let me put you off, of course. And then next week, he's a prime captaincy candidate against Leeds anyway. So Saka, a decent option. Obviously, as always, will come out pretty well on the expected points. But I think there are a few other options that feel like safer picks to me. Bowen is the last differential I want to talk about. He's not that low owned, but I don't think many people will captain him. Sunderland away in game week 1. I think it will be a tougher fixture than some people are expecting at the Stadium of Light. Their first Premier League fixture in, I think, 9 or 10 years now. So they are going to be bang up for it. They're going to be competitive against West Ham. But Bowen does find a way of just eking out points every single week. And last season, towards the end of last year anyway, he was so unbelievably consistent that it really did hurt you if you didn't have him in your side. So with such a nice looking fixture on paper, I can spin all the narrative I like about how good Sunderland might be. They've signed really well. They're going to be bang up for it. But you have to target some fixtures. And Sunderland seems as good a fixture as any to target, potentially, even if it is away from home. And Bowen is one of the most consistent performers that we've got in the Premier League at the moment over several seasons worth of data. He is now reclassified as a forward, and I think that does dent his appeal slightly. 1 less point for a goal, no clean sheet point, and he does have other players around him that are going to take goal share away from him a little bit this season, like Füllkrug, for instance. So West Ham are expected 1.55 goals on average against Sunderland. So for Bowen to be a really good captaincy option, West Ham will probably have to outperform what the models are projecting, because you probably want a couple of goal contributions, involvements from Bowen for him to go up against the likes of Salah, Palmer, Haaland, and the other options I've mentioned today as well, who all, despite the projections maybe not expecting them to get over 1 goal, you'd expect at least 1 or 2 of them to get a couple of returns in this game week. So he still ranks pretty well. He will be a good, interesting differential. But for me, I'm not sure that I would be recommending him as a captaincy this game week. Just to get off to a nice, solid start, Bowen in your team is probably going to be enough. I don't think you need to captain him necessarily to get benefit from owning him. Right then, so on to my preferred captaincy rankings for game week 1. And this is going to be a weekly game that I play against myself. Feel free to get involved as well with your favorite captain for game week 1. I'm not going to limit myself to players in my personal team. This will be across the entire player base who I think is going to be the best captaincy option for that particular game week. And I'm going to measure it with a hit rate and a rate of returns throughout the season. So the hit rate will be whether or not my preferred captain returned. And then the returns are going to be the total amount of returns that I've gotten from my favorite captaincy pick that week. So let's say Mo Salah gets a hat-trick this week, I'll have 3 returns from one game week. So we'll have a look at the average point score that I am getting from my captain throughout the season to see whether or not I'm any good at this. And of course, feel free to play in the comments below as well. So I am predictably perhaps going with Mo Salah in game week 1. I think there is solid logic to the fact that he comes out so far ahead on the projected points, but also looking at the narrative that I talked about earlier on, Bournemouth are going to play a high line. I don't think they're going to sit back in a low block. Iraola just does not know how to play that way. He's got his footballing principles. I don't think he's going to change that, even if they do have a little bit of a makeshift backline to begin with. And I think Liverpool have looked fluid in attack through pre-season. They did struggle a little bit in the second half against Crystal Palace. And Mo Salah did not have the best game in the Community Shield either. But I back the talent of the player, I back the talent of the team, and I think they will get chances in behind that high line. And Mo Salah is one of the best players in the entire world at exploiting a high line. So for me, I think it just makes sense. The markets do agree, so this is a little bit of a predictable one. But throughout the season, I'm hopeful that I will find times where I can go against the markets and maybe pick out a captaincy that other people might not be considering. For now, though, I think there is solid logic with playing it a little bit sensible, and I do recommend Mo Salah as the best captaincy option for game week 1 to get off to a solid start. And we just know what we're getting with Mo Salah. After a few game weeks, things might change, and it might become more obvious that Mo Salah is not the way to go. For now, though, I don't see anything to suggest that he's tailed off significantly, so he is my preferred option. Coming in at number 2 and number 3. So what I'm going to try and do with either silver or bronze most weeks is pick out a differential alternative that I like the look of. This week, in the bronze medal position, in that 3rd position, I do like Ekitike. I think he looked really sharp against Crystal Palace in the Community Shield. I also think that he's probably going to get 80 to 90 minutes in this one, whereas he got taken off early in the Community Shield. Slot did mention that that was effectively because they don't have many alternatives in that position, and they're trying to save his legs for game week 1. So I think he's in line to get good minutes. And if he does, I really like the expected goal projection. I really like how sharp he looked in the Community Shield as well. And he did look like he was creating a nice, solid partnership early on with Wirtz. So again, as a differential, if you still want that Liverpool coverage and you still want to captain a player in that fixture, but are not convinced by Mo Salah, or maybe you're going with a game week 1 squad without him, which is perfectly viable, then I do like Ekitike. I also like Wirtz, but I think Ekitike's goal threat in particular is going to be very, very high this season. So look out for him. I think he's going to spin that Bournemouth high line, and I think he's going to have a lot of fun against Bournemouth. Erling Haaland comes in a close second to Mo Salah. I think there's perfectly viable strategies looking at Haaland instead of Salah. And again, I really like that fixture against Wolves. I think it's being underplayed by the models a little bit. And Wolves look like a team that are just not quite ready for the start of the season. Now, if any Wolves fans disagree with me, please let me know in the comments below. Most of the Wolves fans that I've talked to are maybe a little bit worried about how the start of the season is going to go. But if you're more positive, I do want to hear from you. I do want to hear that perspective. So let me know in the comments below. But Erling Haaland, having had a good amount of rest over pre-season. I know they played the Club World Cup, but they left that fairly early. I think it was the quarterfinals. And then they've only played one pre-season friendly. So I think he should be fresh. I think he should be sharp. And Man City do look like a side that are going to bounce back this season. Haaland's going to be at the tip of that iceberg, and I think that he is going to benefit greatly from the creative players around him, like Cherky, like Reinders as well. I think he's going to have a very good season, and Wolves is a good fixture. So for me, I'm going with Mo Salah, but I also really like Haaland as an alternative. And if you want to go differential, My preferred option would be Ekatike. But of course, as always, let me know in the comments who your favorite captaincy options are for Game Week 1. If I've missed any out of this video altogether, drop a comment below and we can have a chat about them. And as always, if you enjoyed today's video, leave a like, hit subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Tomorrow, I'll be coming out with my team selection ahead of Game Week 1. It's going to be a big video, so you don't want to miss out on that.